A lot of students make the mistake of following trends or going to countries where they have friends and relatives so that they'll have a little bit of a comfort, which is an absolute don't as per me. So there's a term that we look at called ROE, which is the return on education. So if you're spending an X amount of money, if there is no return on investment, then it's absolutely pointless. We come from a society where our education system is defined by the ranking. So if you go to an IITs, the job is guaranteed.
Right.
But that's not the case abroad. The rankings don't guarantee job. They also get the exposure of working in a foreign country, because today international experience, if they choose to come back to India, will be very valuable. So what he did was he put up a small board on his right side, right, and he made some points on the board. And he kept looking at the board and looking at the interviewer, kept looking at the board, looking at the interviewer. The interviewer caught it immediately and they rejected him, saying that he was reading and then giving the answers.
In some of the interviews, they're also going to talk to you about the country that you grew up in.
Ideally, they should not be talking about settlement, because their primary goal to go there is to study, right? Because then it will be a red flag.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Big Leap with Study Smart. On this podcast, we have been breaking down the world of education step by step only for you. We've covered everything from building a strong profile to choosing the right course, the right university, and so much more. But there's one request that just keeps popping up on our YouTube, on our Instagram, and even when students come for counseling, and that is, can you give us just one practical episode where we just cover hacks of do's and don'ts and just, help them to get a better quality of life when they go to study abroad? So that's exactly what we are going to do in this episode. And who better to do this than someone who has been on that entire journey himself and then helped other students to achieve a great amount of success through their study abroad journeys. So we have with us the founder and managing director of Study Smart, Mr. Chetan Jain.
Thank you, Apoorva. This episode I'm particularly looking forward to, because when we talk about the do's and don'ts during our counseling sessions, a lot of students think we're just giving gyan, right? But today I want to clear the air there that there are genuinely things that you need to do, and there are genuinely things that you don't need to do. And also going to try and give some pro tips from my own experience and clarify things that the students should be ideally focusing on. So while this episode might be a little repetitive, we might cover a lot of topics that we've covered before, but I just want to emphasize on all the important ones.
True. So let's dive in.
Let's go.
Chetan, let's start with one of the most frequently asked questions by students. Which country is the best for study abroad?
I wish I had a straight answer for this. There is no best country to study abroad. There are multiple factors that one should be looking at before choosing what country they want to go for. A lot of students make the mistake of following trends or going to countries where they have friends and relatives so that they'll have a little bit of a comfort, which is an absolute don't as per me. What they should be focusing on and realize that the country they're going to go to, they're going to live there for a while. So that country should have good scope for them. At the same time, it needs to be livable for them. And it needs to be a combination of both. Today, if you end up in a country that has great career opportunities, but there are cultural barriers, there are language barriers, there's not enough Indian community there, food is a problem, then is that the right country for you? I don't think so. Right? So focusing on the right country is very, very important, and there are certain do's that they should be looking at.
So what are these do's or don'ts also in that case?
So the do's, I would say, firstly would be, what is the career scope for you in that country? So we just spoke about that in some of our episodes where we talked about the industry presence.
Yes.
So whatever career choice you're making, does that have a strong industry presence there or not? So today, if you're an IT student, you should be targeting countries like US or Ireland, which are largest software exporters in the world. Because the industry presence is strong, automatically your career opportunities will be good. Career opportunities being good will reflect in the kind of money you're earning and will reflect in the kind of settlement opportunities you'll have. So look at those factors. One more important aspect to look at is the visa regulations of that country. Both visa regulation as far as a student visa is concerned, and then what are their immigration policies? Are they supporting you to give you some work permit after you finish your course? Are they supporting you to help migrate into that country or get your PR? To give you an example, Singapore, which is a very popular destination, a great quality of education, has some fantastic universities which are top 50 globally ranked universities. But if your long-term goal is to work in a foreign country, then Singapore is not the right choice for you because their immigration norms don't allow it. So once you finish your course, you can only work there if an employer sponsors you, which is very, very difficult. Otherwise, you come back. So there's a term that we look at called ROE, which is the return on education, like how you have return on investment. So you also need to measure the ROE of that country. And if you are spending an X amount of money, do you have enough opportunity to earn in a foreign currency and get some return on the investment that you've made? If there is no return on investment, then it's absolutely pointless.
Right. And some of the don'ts, what would those be?
I think trends, right? Unfortunately, we're living in a society, and especially students who are spending so much time on Instagram, they don't realize that the moment they search about something about studying abroad, Instagram is bombarding them with all sorts of articles and all sorts of things. And they tend to follow the trends they see on social media, which may not always be right.
Yeah.
To give you another example of this, until 2023, Canada was the most booming country where everybody वो भेड़ चाल हो रहा था कि ये सब Canada आ रहे तो हम भी Canada जाएंगे. 2023 saw the peak. There were over 6.5 lakh students that went into Canada. 2024 is dropped down, rather 25 is dropped down to just 80 or 90,000 people. So see the drop that's got in.
That's crazy.
Right? So as education counselors and someone who does this for a living, we're constantly seeing the situation in these countries. We're constantly researching, and we're not seeing what's going to happen in the next 1 or 2 years. We are actually analyzing what's going to happen over the next 5 to 10 years.
Right.
So you need to be wary of how the long-term immigration policy of that country is, because today students who went in 2004 are feeling absolutely stuck, and they feel the country ka choice hi hamara galat ho gaya. Right? So again, choosing the country, this is one of the biggest don'ts, that don't follow trends. Look at long-term implications, look at the long-term immigration policy, the long-term economic situation of the country, and then choose the country.
What about another aspect that students consider when choosing the country is English-only countries? Is that something?
I get criticized a lot by a lot of my students for this, but I always insist that language is very, very important. And language is not just important for the course itself or your career outcomes. It's also important for your social life. Right? Today, studying abroad is not just about studying at the university. You're spending maybe 4 or 5 hours at the university. The remaining time you're spending outside the university. So the kind of social experiences you have, the kind of friends you make, the lifestyle that you live there is going to play a very important role. And if language becomes a barrier, then you can't have a good social life.
Right.
So I would say language should be looked at. And as a thumb rule, unless and until you're making an investment in studying a new language, you should target English-speaking countries.
Okay. And what about choosing a country based on where your friends are heading?
Definitely not a good choice. Yes, it's always good to have that comfort of having friends or acquaintances before you reach that country. But it's not very difficult to make new friends. And, again, I have a lot of students who will go with a bunch of friends, then they will end up living with those bunch of friends, they'll end up going out with those same bunch of friends. Then why are you spending that money and time in going abroad? Going abroad is also about meeting people from different walks of life, learning about new cultures, new religions. Right? So if I would say you should go to a country where you have no friends, so then you have to go out there and come out of your little shell and explore the world.
Yeah. Once students finalize the country, they immediately jump into university with rankings.
Correct.
So should that be the deciding factor?
Rankings are definitely important, but I would say they contribute only 5 or 10% to the decision-making factors. Right, Apoorva, let me ask you, have you ever bought a house?
Not yet.
But are you planning to buy a house?
Sure.
So if you're planning to buy a house, how many factors or what factors would you typically look at?
I think the area where I would want to stay, the kind of house like 2 BHK, 3 BHK, and the pricing. Those are particularly the basic things that I would
So 3
look
to
at.
4, 5 factors. Ideally, you should be looking at many more factors while buying a house. What is the availability of medical help in that area? Do you have schools in that area so that when you have children, can they travel easily? What's the builder that is building that house? What kind of a reputation the builder has? What are the amenities they're giving you within the society? Do you have a good lawn? Do you have amenities for the children to play? Right? You should be looking at the infrastructure there. What's the quality of infrastructure there?
Right.
Size, price are 2 basic things, and reputation, third. These are the 3 things what typically you would look at while buying a house.
Yes.
The same mistake students make when they're choosing a university. They look at the ranking, they look at the location of the university, and then they will look at ki price kaisa hai, scholarships hai ki nahi, is it fitting in my budget? But even while you're evaluating your university, there are 30 plus factors that one should be looking at. And today I would like to just focus on maybe some of the important factors that one should look at while choosing the right university. So firstly, they should be looking at the infrastructure of the university, what kind of facilities they have, what kind of societies they have, extracurricular opportunities they have. Again, you're going to spend only 4 to 5 hours in the classroom, but you're going to spend a lot of time outside the classroom as well. So do they have good facilities for you to pursue other hobbies, pursue other aspects of life or not? Secondly, careers is something that is very, very important. A lot of universities vary in the kind of career support they provide. They vary in the kind of industry collaborations they have, the industry links that they have. So today, if a university is located in an area which has great industry presence, automatically their industry ties will be better. The chances of students getting jobs after they graduate from that university will be better.
Right.
So rankings obviously do not play a role here. What kind of support the university provides in terms of career plays a role there. I can give you an example. Right?
Even internships?
Absolutely. Internships are a part of a pathway, I would say. Today, if you're able to secure an internship while you're studying, your chances of getting a full-time job are much, much better. Right? So I'll give you an example of a student, academically brilliant. He could have gone into perpetually any university he wanted. So he could easily target the extremely top 5, top 10 universities. He went to UK, but instead he chose a mid-rank modern university and something which is far more affordable. But his focus was which universities have the best career facilities. So this particular university actually has a tie-up with a recruitment company that provides students support from first semester itself on helping them find jobs. So right from helping them in building their CV to taking them for career workshops, inviting industries to come onto the campus. They're doing all that kind of an infrastructure or a ecosystem for the student from day one. So they don't have to wait to finish their course and then start looking for jobs. They pretty much start looking for jobs from the very first or second semester. And he was able to secure a very good job because of this right choice of university that he made.
That must be so stress-free for the student, knowing that somebody is always there helping you build the next step.
100%. And just general perception, and I don't blame the students for this. We come from a society where our education system is defined by the ranking. So if you go to an IITs, the job is guaranteed. But that's not the case abroad. The rankings don't guarantee jobs. There are multiple factors you need to look at.
Okay, and also when it comes to universities, particularly in Western countries, you have cities that are dedicated to those educational universities. Then in that case, should they be focusing more on the popular city, or should they be choosing the right university which is correct for them?
So being in big cities definitely have its certain advantages. So I believe the social experiences in bigger cities are better. So today, whichever country you're going to, target the top 5, top 6 cities of that particular country. So if you're looking at Australia, for example, we say look at Sydney and Melbourne. If you're looking at UK, focus on London, Manchester, Glasgow, Leeds, right? The advantage of going to the big cities would be your social experience will be fantastic. Your availability of part-time jobs are much better. Again, that's important because you want to sustain your living expenses and not burden your parents with the living expenses. So availability of part-time jobs is important. And even after you finish your course, your opportunities in a bigger city will be much better. So to give you some Indian context, if you study in an excellent institute like say Sanjay Godawat in Kolhapur versus you study an average university in Pune, the exposure that you'll get in a city like Pune is still going to be far more superior. So that applies to foreign countries as well.
Okay, I think that's very important. And according to you, how does choosing the right university around the industry help with the career growth?
So again, most foreign universities have a lot of research collaborations. So the trend in UK, US particularly is that the companies that work there or they have industry presence don't spend on their own R&D. They outsource their R&D to the university. So they would typically do that to universities which are in their vicinity, right? So if today you're going to a university which has a lot of industry around it, then the university would have a lot of research collaborations already going on with that company, right? Which means they have relations, they have ties, they have interactions that are happening. So again, that gives the student a better platform to apply for jobs if they're going to a university which has good industry ties up.
Amazing. When a child chooses to go abroad for their studies, the parents are most concerned with the financial part of it. And in that planning, generally a parent decides that based on the amount of fees that need to be paid, that is how a choice should be made. Is that the smart way?
So yeah, it's a little confusing for students and parents both. There is a certain school of thought that jitna महंगा होगा उतना अच्छा होगा, right? Because we keep changing branded things. So a lot of students make that mistake of if the university is expensive and the fees are higher, then automatically the placements will be good or the university is better. That may not be the case, right? The second school of thought that a lot of students have is कि सस्ता है तो बुरा है. Again, that's not the case, right? So I would not measure a university or the quality of the university and the quality of outcomes it has on the basis of the pricing of the university. I think the students should look at what their realistic budget is and then narrow down on the university choices based on their budget, right? Yes, they can stretch their budget to a certain extent by a 10%, 20% kind of a range, but they should not be overshooting their budget because sometimes if they don't land up with the part-time jobs, they have to support for their living expenses as well. So they should always have a buffer because expenses ज़्यादा होते हैं, right? अगर आप 20 पकड़ के चलोगे, you'll end up spending 25 lakhs.
And what about, sections about getting internships?
Right.
Is that important, and should that be considered in the fee part of it as well?
Yeah, internships are important, though a lot of internships are unpaid. But today, if you get an internship, your ability to get a full-time job improves a lot, right? So every financial investment, you also have to look at a return. So today, if I'm investing in a stock, I will first look at how quickly can I make a return on that investment. So time is a factor and the percentage of return is a factor.
Yes.
So again, when you're choosing a university or choosing a course, you should be looking at what's the investment you're making and how quickly you're able to get a return on that investment. So if you are choosing a university or a course that has internships attached to it, work placements attached to it, or there's a strong career support with it, or if it's a professionally accredited program, then your ability to get a full-time job will be a lot better.
Okay, and on the part where you spoke about the return on education and financial planning, should students also be looking at the part-time work policies in these countries?
I think not just the part-time work policies, even the post-study work visa policies. Okay. So firstly, are the students allowed to work part-time during their course? Most countries do allow you to work 20 hours a week while you're studying, but there are some countries that don't. So obviously focus on countries that allow you to work part-time so that while you're studying, you're able to sustain your living expenses. And part-time work also gives students a lot of skills, right? A lot of intangible skills get built. They understand time management, money management. For most of them, this is their first job ever. So a lot of exposure comes from there as well. And once they finish their course, is the country allowing them to work there, right? I would say a minimum 1.5 to 2 year work permit should be available for students so that A, they can make some return on their investment, and B, they also get the exposure of working in a foreign country because today international experience, if they choose to come back to India, will be very valuable. If they simply just go to a foreign country, come back with a degree, their chances, they may have a little bit of an edge in India, but it's not a game changer. But the moment they have 1 or 2 years of international work experience on their CV, when they come back to India, it's going to be a game changer for them.
Okay, and then another point that comes to my mind is, we have the kind of tech that probably was not even thinkable 10 years ago, especially when researching now. So how can that play a role in this financial planning part of it? Should students be looking at social media platforms like LinkedIn? For researching what are the jobs available? What is the kind of salary that they should be looking at?
So, Apoorva, when I was going to do my master's, we did not even have the internet, right? So, doing research was extremely difficult. You used to basically rely on talking to people over the phone or I've even written letters to universities back then, right? But today, the kids have fantastic tools available to them where they can take some in-depth research and have a very learned choice. Obviously, there's an overload of information also, so they need to have the filters on. But a platform like LinkedIn is great. So LinkedIn has an alumni platform where you can see that certain graduates from certain universities, if you want to see what kind of success rate they had, what kind of average salaries they're earning, all that data is now available at your disposal. Yeah, some of these tools are paid, like you need to pay for them. But yeah, there are tools, and LinkedIn, I would say, is a great place to measure the success of alumni from a particular university, but it's also a great place to connect with people. So today, if you are targeting a certain university, you can search people who have studied in that university and send them a connect request or send them an email asking them for their time to speak about their experience. So it's a great way to connect with alumni as well.
Okay. And another point about financials is the scholarships. So should the scholarships be something that, ये तो मिलने वाला है, ऐसा लेके चलना चाहिए.
Right. I wish that was the case. A lot of students do fall for the scholarship trap. And it's a very popular way for consultants to advertise that हम scholarship दिला देंगे, 50% करा देंगे, 100% करा देंगे. In all honesty, scholarships are difficult, right? They're very, very competitive. But that does not mean that students cannot apply for it. Practically, they can expect a 10 to a 30% kind of a scholarship range that they can get comfortably.
Okay.
But anything beyond that is very, very rare, and it's for extremely talented, gifted students who are really academically very strong.
Okay.
Right? But yes, every student should explore all the possibilities of scholarships and apply for as many scholarships as possible. Not just scholarships which are provided by universities, but even external scholarships. So there are, scholarships provided by NGOs.
Yeah.
There are some Indian government scholarships that are available. There are scholarships by social communities that are available. So they should explore all their possibilities, because whatever money they save is money earned.
Yeah.
And at the same time, their ROE will be a lot better if they are getting scholarships.
True. Chetan, another critical aspect of study abroad is admissions.
Right.
So you need to fill out your applications, have your SOPs in place. So what are some do's and don'ts for this particular activity?
I'll tell you a funny story that pretty much happens at least twice or thrice a week. So we get our students to write a basic SOP, and then we have our in-house editors who would kind of, touch it up and enhance it a little. Many a times when we send the edited version back to the students, they feel, "Arey, kya bakwas SOP banaya hai?" Right? They're like, "Oh, you've not used any heavy words. Your vocabulary is very basic." And actually, that's what the university wants to see. So you don't want to use too many fancy words. You don't want to use fancy vocabulary. It needs to sound very, very realistic and sound like a student has written it. So if it sounds like a professional has written it, these guys are experts. They read SOPs day in and day out. They will catch it immediately if a professional has written it, or even if you've used, AI tools to write it, they'll catch it immediately.
Right. So basically just being yourself is part one of it.
100%.
And what about what kind of aspects should be covered within that SOP?
So a lot of students feel it's their report card. It's not their report card. They just need to talk about their story. They need to realistically say what their experiences have been, academic experiences, non-academic experiences, social interactions, leadership, talk a little about the voluntary work they've done. So they need to talk about who they are and why they are what they are. And also focus a lot on realistic facts, like why you want to do this course, why you want to study in that university. So it needs to be as realistic as possible, rather than it being all fabricated.
Okay. And what about the profile itself? Should they also include whatever extracurricular activities they've done, any internships? Should also all of that form a part of the
Definitely.
process?
I think a lot more needs to be spoken about the profile, because that's not on paper, right? Today, your academics, your mark sheets are going to get submitted. A lot of your certificates are going to get submitted. So the university, by looking at that, will have a fair idea of your academic profile. But what they don't know is what your non-academic profile is.
Right.
So a lot of softer aspects of your profile should be covered in your SOP, internships that you've done, summer schools that you've attended, unique experiences that you've had that have, taught you something. So that should be the more focus of the content of the SOP.
Okay. An important point in that study abroad process is the interview. And the admissions teams or the compliance team from the university takes those interviews.
Right.
That is particularly intimidating, especially for an undergrad student. What should they keep in mind when preparing for these interviews?
I think it's important to first understand why does the university do the interview. At times, the students don't understand the purpose of the interview. So first, you need to understand what's the purpose. So there are two folds or two different purposes the university has. One is obviously to check your application. If they have more questions about your application, if they want to know more about your personality, if they want to know more about you as a person, where they feel that you will play a role in the class and the class needs to be interactive. So it's more for the admission process. Okay. And then there are some compliance-oriented interviews also, where they want to check the ability of a student to get a visa in case he gets an interview by the embassy. So there they want to check, is the student genuine? Is he coming to the country for the right reasons or not? Right? So depending on the type of interview, the student preparation also needs to be as per the purpose of the interview. Many a times students tend to confuse these two things, and that is where they make mistakes.
Okay, and for some people who might be applying from tier 2, tier 3 cities or towns, English is also a very important factor, that they may not feel confident enough in talking in English, or they feel like, oh, they might be judging me for the words I use, they're basic. What about that?
Right. So I think students who are not very comfortable with English, firstly, I don't think they'll get to the interview stage, because a certain level of English language expertise is required for you to even apply to the universities and get to an application stage. Moreover, if they're not very comfortable, they should put in some level of practice in, practicing with a friend. But the language need not again be fancy. You don't need to use heavy words. I would say keep it simple. Keep the flow very natural. Right? If they feel, the interviewer feels that you're reading and then answering, or your answers are very scripted, they will catch it immediately. I'll give you a recent example. One of our students, very good student, comes from an ICSE school. So language was not an issue, but he was nervous.
Okay.
So what he did was he put up a small board on his right side, right? And he put the screen here. It was a Skype
Virtual.
interview, right? And he made some points on the board. And he kept looking at the board and looking at the interviewer, kept looking at the board, looking at the interviewer. The interviewer caught it immediately and they rejected him, saying that he was reading and then giving the answers. So these are some of the points that the students need to be careful about.
Okay, and whenever facing these interviews, what do the students need to know about their own field, the one they are applying for?
Right. Obviously, they need not have expert knowledge about the industry they're applying for, but they should know why they're doing that. They should have a clear understanding and a clear view on why they have chosen to study this course, how it is going to benefit their career, what are their career objectives, and all this needs to be aligned. Right. At the same time, many a times the students, what they mention on their application and SOP and what they talk in the interview are contradicting, which is again a huge reason for failure. So ideally, you should go through your SOP thoroughly, you should go through your profile thoroughly, and your interview should be in line with what you've mentioned on your application. You should not contradict your application.
Okay. And do they get any finance-related questions in these interviews?
Yes. So typically, the compliance interviews that the university do will be very focused on finance, both in terms of the student's ability to pay the tuition fees, pay for the living expenses, and they will try to understand the student's financial background. So they may ask questions like, what is your parents' income? They will see, is the income matching up to the kind of expense they're willing to make. So financial questions will definitely be there in a compliance interview.
Okay. Another point that, in some of the interviews, they're also going to talk to you about the country that you grew up in.
Right.
What are the kind of thoughts students should share in that case?
So before they get to that point, they need to talk a little about why they're choosing to study in whatever country they're choosing to. Right. But at the same time, you don't want to badmouth your own country.
Okay.
Right. That reflects very negatively in the interview. So they should be very clear as to what opportunities are being provided in the country they're targeting versus what opportunities are not available in their own country, and that is why they're doing that. But that does not mean you talk badly about your own country. So a lot of students end up doing that, and they're not very clear on why they want to go to that country as well. So some amount of research on the country, about the industry presence there, about the kind of companies that are operating there, will help them in giving this answer more clearly.
And a lot of students apply with the logic that they want to settle in that country.
Yes.
Is that something that they should be speaking about in the interview process?
So ideally, they should not be talking about settlement because their primary goal to go there is to study, right? So university may flag them as a potential migrant when they say that I want to settle in the country. There's no harm in saying that you want to study there and then work there for exposure, but you never want to categorically mention that yes, I want to settle in the country, because then it'll be a red flag.
Okay, got it. So I think what is important when students are preparing for the interview is knowing yourself better.
100%. So this is where, again, counselors can help. A lot of guidelines are available. We have documents in place of sample questions, sample answers. What are the typical answers that you can give? Obviously, we don't want the students to mug up those answers, but they can use it as a reference point to understand what the thought process behind those answers are. So they should be prepared in terms of both taking up enough research on the university, on the course, and taking up enough research about the country as well.
Chetan, I just feel like, based on our conversation, that this interview portion should be a separate episode. There's so much to learn and so much that they need to imbibe.
Yeah, I think next time we can even do a mock interview ourselves.
Done.
The biggest risk you're taking by exceeding those working hours is the risk of getting deported. Maximum rejections happen due to financial documents. Some countries want to see the source of the money that you've got, right? Because suddenly if you're putting 20 lakh rupees into your account, not only will the visa officer question you, even the IT department might question you, right? And one thing which is a huge no-no, and it's unfortunately a big practice in India, particularly in certain states of India, is fraudulent bank documents. So do not fabricate your documents. Do not manipulate your IT returns. That's a mistake a lot of people make.
Gadgets is something everybody loves. And once you go there, you feel like, oh, I can buy this now, I can buy that now in this country, and not wait for the version to come to India.
Right. Apoorva, I can talk from personal experience that the first 2 to 3 weeks are the most difficult for a student, right? How you spend your first 2-3 weeks in that country will shape up how the rest of your life in that country is going to be.